The storm screamed across the alien plains, carrying dust, ice, and pain. Under the pale twin moons of planet Alaris, a small tent shook like a dying bird. Inside, two shapes huddled close, a mother and her little daughter. The mother's name was Lyra, her skin a soft shade of silver blue, her eyes large and glowing faintly in the dark. The child, Nira, was only 6, too young to understand why their world had turned so cold. Their planet had once been green and full of songs. Rivers ran through golden valleys, and the stars above were gentle friends. But now, after the War of the Suns, everything was broken. The warm core of Alaris had cooled, and endless winter ruled. The cities fell silent, power grids collapsed, and thousands of families vanished into the white storm. Lyra and Nira were among the survivors. Barely. They had been walking for 3 days, searching for a signal beacon or shelter. The last piece of food had been eaten that morning. Now the storm had caught them, and the cold bit like knives. The small thermal tent they found half buried in the snow was their only hope. Lyra's trembling fingers pressed the tiny heat cell, but its light flickered weakly. The power was almost gone. "Please," she whispered, voice shaking. "Just a little more heat." The cell gave a short spark, then died. The temperature dropped fast. Frost formed on the inner walls of the tent. Little Nira's teeth began to chatter. "Mama," she murmured, her voice small and weak. "It's cold. It hurts." Lyra pulled her close, wrapping her in the thin thermal blanket. But it wasn't enough. Her daughter's tiny hands were turning pale. Panic rose inside Lyra's chest. She knew what would happen next. She had seen others freeze in their sleep. "No," she whispered fiercely, tears freezing on her cheeks. "I won't let you die, my star." She pulled Nira against her chest and covered her with her own body, trying to share her warmth. But she was cold too. Her breath came out as white smoke, thin and fast. Her heart beat slower every minute, then at a faint sound, a mechanical hum. Lyra lifted her head. Outside the tent, through the storm, a dull glow moved in the distance, like metal reflecting moonlight. She blinked, unsure if it was real or just her mind breaking from cold. The hum grew louder. A shape appeared, tall, broad, and moving against the wind. Lyra held her daughter tighter. Fear struck her heart. Was it a machine from the war, a raider? The figure came closer. 2 glowing circles where eyes should be. It stopped near the tent and crouched. The tent flap opened with a sharp hiss of frozen air. A man stood there, a human. Lyra had never seen one before, only heard stories. The humans had come from a faraway system, helping during the last war, then vanishing when peace failed. Some said they were heroes. Others said they were monsters. This one looked neither. His face was half covered in frost, his beard white with ice. He wore a thick exosuit that hummed softly, and his breath came out heavy and tired. For a long second, no one moved. Only the storm roared. Then the man spoke, his voice deep but calm. "Is someone alive in here?" Lyra wanted to answer, but her lips were numb. She only nodded weakly. The man entered, sealing the flap behind him. He looked at the child in her arms and the dead heat cell beside them. Then, without another word, he reached to his wrist unit and pressed a button. Warm orange light filled the tent. A portable heat emitter flickered to life. Instantly, the air began to thaw. Lyra gasped as warmth spread across her frozen skin. Nira stirred, letting out a soft sigh of relief. "Hold on," the man said. "You'll be all right now." Lyra stared at him. "Oh, who are you?" she whispered. He gave a tired smile. "Name's Eli Grant, Exploration Corps. Or, what's left of it." Lyra blinked. She had heard that name before. The human who had stayed behind when others left. The one who refused to abandon the fallen world. "You saved us," she said softly. He shook his head. "Not yet." Eli checked the tent's structure. The walls were weak, the insulation poor. "This won't hold if the storm gets worse," he said. "We need to move to the crash shelter, a few hundred meters east." Lyra looked at her sleeping daughter, her fear rising again. "She can't walk. She's too weak." Eli nodded. "Then I'll carry her." He lifted Nira gently in his arms, wrapping the blanket around her. The little girl didn't wake and only breathed slowly, finally warm. Lyra followed, her heart torn between fear and hope. Outside, the storm howled louder, but Eli's suit shielded them, creating a small field of calm air around him. Lyra walked close behind, the glow of his emitter lighting their way through the blizzard. Every step was heavy. The snow reached up to their knees. The sky above was black, flashing with distant lightning. After what felt like an hour, a shadow appeared. A half-buried metal dome. The shelter. Eli forced the door open with his mechanical arm. Inside was dark but safe. He set Nira down on an old cot and covered her again. Then he looked at Lyra, shivering, eyes full of tears. "You're safe now," he said gently. "Both of you," Lyra's voice broke. Why would a human help us?" Eli looked at her for a long time, then said quietly, "Because no one deserves to die cold." The warmth filled the small room. Lyra watched him as he repaired the heater. Something strange stirred in her heart, a tiny spark of trust glowing in the middle of the endless night. Outside, the storm still screamed. But inside, for the first time in months, there was warmth and hope. The storm raged above, but deep under the metal dome, the sound faded into a dull whisper. Eli sealed the door, pressed a few buttons on the control pad, and finally exhaled. The small shelter came to life. Soft lights blinked on, heaters hummed, and warm air began to flow. Lyra sat near the cot, holding her daughter's tiny hand. The warmth made her body ache as the numbness faded. She looked up at Eli, the strange human who had appeared from the storm like a ghost of hope. He moved with quiet confidence. His suit hissed as it released pressure, and he pulled off his frost-covered gloves. His hands were rough, scarred, hands of a man who had fought, worked, and survived. "Your girl will be fine," he said softly. "She just needs rest and warmth." Lyra nodded. "Thank you, I thought we would die tonight." Eli gave a half-smile, checking a small scanner on his wrist. "You almost did. The storm's reading is off the charts. Wind speed over 200 clicks. No one should be out there." Lyra lowered her eyes. "We had no choice. Our camp. It was attacked." Eli's head turned sharply. "Attacked? By what?" She hesitated. "Raiders. The kind that wear the old war armor. They take what little is left, food, tech, people." Her voice cracked. "We ran before they reached our tent." "I thought they lost us." Eli's jaw tightened. "They probably didn't." He turned to the door control panel, typing commands quickly. "This shelter was meant for emergencies. It's not built for combat. If those raiders track your heat trail, they could find us." Lyra's breath caught. "Then what do we do?" Eli looked at her calmly. "We prepare." He opened a metal case in the corner. Inside lay a rifle, a few power cells, and a glowing sphere. He lifted the sphere, a motion sensor, and placed it by the door. Lyra watched silently. For a moment she saw something strange in the human's eyes, a quiet sadness like a man who had already lost too much. When he finished setting up defenses, he turned back to her. "You should eat something." "I have nothing left," she said quietly. Eli reached into his pack and handed her a small silver packet. "Nutrient bar. Not tasty, but it'll keep you alive." She took it with shaking hands. "Why are you helping us?" she asked again. "Most humans left Alaris long ago. They said it wasn't worth saving." Eli looked at the heater's orange light. "They were right," he said after a pause. "The planet's dying. But I stayed because I couldn't forget the faces." "Faces?" He nodded slowly. "The ones I couldn't save during the war. I told myself if I could save even one more life, maybe it would mean something." Lyra said nothing. The warmth, the quiet, and his words made her chest tighten. This man, this human, carried ghosts she couldn't see. A soft sound broke the silence. Nira stirring. The little girl opened her eyes, blinking at the warm light. "Mama, it's warm," she whispered. Lyra smiled, tears welling. "Yes, my star. You're safe now." Nira looked at Eli, confused. "Who is he?" Lyra hesitated. "He's a friend. He saved us." The child studied the human, her glowing blue eyes wide. "He doesn't look like us." Eli chuckled softly. "You don't look like me either. Guess that makes us even." For the first time in months, Lyra heard her daughter laugh, a small, fragile sound that cut through the cold silence. Eli smiled faintly, but the peace didn't last long. The sensor by the door beeped, once, twice, then turned red. Eli's face changed instantly. He moved to the console and pulled up the scanner feed. A group of heat signatures appeared outside the dome. 6. "No, 7, raiders," he muttered. Lyra froze. "They found us?" "Looks like it." Eli grabbed his rifle and checked the charge. "They're scanning the area. Once they spot the heat leak from the vent, they'll come straight here. Lyra's hands shook. We can't fight them. They'll kill us. Eli looked back at her, calm, steady, but firm. Not if I stop them first. He moved toward the airlock, but Lyra stood up quickly and blocked his path. No, you'll die out there. He stopped. Someone has to buy time. Tears filled her eyes. You don't even know us. Why risk your life? Eli looked at the small girl sleeping again on the cot. Because no one should lose a child like that. Not while I'm still breathing. The words hit her heart like a warm fire. She wanted to argue, to beg him to stay, but something in his voice and the quiet strength made her stop. He pressed a button on his wrist, activating his armor's external field. The glow lit his face for a moment, human, tired, determined. Lock the door after I leave, he said. If I don't come back in 20 minutes, you take the emergency tunnel and head east. There's an old relay station there. It's safer. Lyra's voice trembled. And if you do come back? He smiled faintly. Then maybe we'll all live to see the sunrise. Before she could say anything, the door hissed open and the freezing wind rushed in again. Eli stepped into the storm, his figure disappearing into white chaos. Lyra stood there shaking, staring at the door. The sensor blinked red again. She could hear faint echoes of battle, the hiss of plasma, the thud of footsteps, the roar of the storm. She held her daughter close, whispering, Please, let him come back. The shelter lights flickered. Outside, the world screamed, and in the middle of the frozen wasteland, one human fought alone against the storm, against death, just to keep two strangers alive. Outside the shelter, the storm howled like a living beast. Snow and dust spun through the air, hiding everything in white rage. Somewhere in that chaos, Eli Grant moved like a shadow. He crouched behind a half-buried wreck, an old cargo hauler frozen solid, and watched the red lights flicker through the fog. 7 raiders. Their armor was stolen, mixed from old war suits and scavenged tech. Their voices crackled over static. Heat trace confirmed, one said. Target inside the dome. 2 life forms, maybe more. Eli's jaw tightened. They found them fast. He checked his rifle. The charge cell glowed green, and whispered to himself, All right, one last fight. He aimed at the first shape moving through the storm. One pulse shot bright blue tore the air apart. The raider fell, armor cracking, steam rising. The rest turned instantly, shouting, firing into the blizzard. Eli ducked, rolled, fired again 3 times, hitting 2 more. His heart pounded, but his mind was calm, trained, cold. Inside the shelter, Lyra flinched at every sound, the muffled explosions, the flashes outside. Her daughter, Nira, clung to her arm. Mama, is he coming back? Lyra forced a smile she didn't feel. Yes, my star. He will. But deep inside, fear whispered the truth. Humans don't survive storms like this. Outside, Eli's rifle clicked empty. He tossed it aside and pulled his sidearm. One raider charged him with a plasma blade screaming through static. Eli dodged, slammed his metal arm into the raider's chest and fired point blank. The armor shattered. The last 2 raiders backed off, scanning the snow. One shouted, He's human! The last one? Eli smirked. You got that right. He sprinted forward. Shots flew past his head. He slid down a snow ridge, fired once, twice. Both raiders dropped. The storm swallowed the echoes. For a moment, silence. Only his heavy breathing and the endless wind. He pressed his hand against his side and his armor was cracked, blood seeping through. Still alive, he muttered. Good enough. He turned toward the faint glow of the shelter, every step slower than the last. His suit's heater struggled against the cold. Inside, Lyra watched the scanner nervously. The red dots disappeared one by one. Then only one signal remained. Eli's. But it flickered weakly. No, she whispered, eyes wide. He's hurt. Without thinking, she ran to the door. Mom. Nira cried, but Lyra stopped only long enough to say, Stay here, my star. Don't move. She grabbed the emergency heat lantern and unsealed the door. The cold hit her like a knife, but she pushed forward, following the faint beacon. The world outside was white and endless. The wind screamed in her ears. Her body shook, but she kept walking. Eli, she shouted. Her voice disappeared in the storm. Eli, where are you? A faint groan answered her. She turned, there, half buried in snow, his armor dim. Eli. She dropped beside him, brushing frost from his face. His eyes were half open, his skin pale. Told you to lock the door, he murmured weakly. Tears filled her eyes. And let you die out here? Never. She pulled his arm around her shoulders, struggling to lift him. He was heavy and every step felt impossible, but she didn't stop. The lantern's glow guided them back toward the dome. Inside, Nira waited by the door, trembling. When it opened and she saw them, she ran forward. Mama, close it. Lyra gasped, falling to her knees. Nira slammed the control, sealing them in warmth again. Eli collapsed beside the heater, breathing hard. His armor hissed as it depressurized. Lyra tore off his chest plate and froze, and blood covered his side. You're hurt badly, she whispered. I've been worse, he said through clenched teeth. Just to need to patch it. He reached for a med kit, but his hand shook too much. Lyra grabbed it instead. Let me. She cleaned the wound, pressed the sealant patch, and wrapped it tight. Her hands trembled, but she worked fast. Eli stared at her, her glowing eyes, her determination, her tears. You're not a soldier, he said softly. No, she whispered. But you saved my daughter. I will not let you die. For a moment they just looked at each other. Two broken souls from different worlds held together by warmth and fear. When she finished, he leaned back, exhausted. Thanks, that patch will hold. For now, Lyra sat beside him. Why did you do it? What? Fight for us. Risk everything. You could have stayed hidden. He was silent for a moment. Then he said quietly, Because I made a promise, Combe, to protect life wherever I find it. Doesn't matter if it's human or not. Lyra's voice softened. You speak like a warrior of the old code. He smiled faintly. Maybe I am the last one. The heater crackled softly. Nira crawled closer, her small hand touching Eli's metal arm. You're warm, she whispered. Eli looked down, surprised. Then he smiled. That's the suit's work, kid. But Lyra shook her head. No, it's you. Outside, the storm began to fade. The first quiet hour in days settled over the world. Eli leaned his head against the metal wall, eyes heavy. Get some rest, he murmured. Tomorrow we move before those raiders send more. Lyra hesitated. You can't even stand, he smirked. Then you'll have to carry me. She laughed softly. The first true laugh since the war began. As Nira drifted to sleep between them, Lyra looked at the human once more. He was scarred, tired, broken, yet somehow, he brought warmth no fire could give. In that silence, something unspoken passed between them. A fragile connection, born not from blood or race, but from survival and kindness. Outside, the snow slowed to a whisper. The storm was ending, but deep inside the frozen world, something else was beginning. A story that neither human nor alien had ever known before. When the morning came, the storm was gone. The world outside the shelter was silent, too silent. Snow covered everything like a wide ocean, smooth and endless under the twin suns. Eli opened his eyes slowly. His side burned, but the bleeding had stopped. He sat up with effort, looking around. Lyra was already awake, sitting near the heater. Her daughter Nira was curled up beside her, sleeping peacefully. For a moment, Eli just watched them. The small alien child's breathing was soft and steady. Lyra's silver-blue skin shimmered faintly in the heater's light. They looked fragile, but there was strength in the way Lyra held her daughter even in sleep, as if nothing could take her away again. Eli finally spoke, his voice rough. We should move soon, Lyra turned. You're still weak. I've been weak before, he said. But we can't stay here. Those raiders had trackers. If they don't report back, others will come. She nodded slowly. Where will we go? There's a communication relay about 20 kilometers east, Eli said, checking his wrist scanner. If we can reach it, I might be able to send a distress signal. Maybe someone out there is still listening. Lyra looked doubtful. You think anyone still answers human calls? He gave a small smile. There's only one way to find out. They prepared quietly. Lyra packed the remaining food rations, wrapped Nira in extra thermal layers, and helped Eli seal his armor. The airlock opened with a hiss and cold wind brushed their faces. The wasteland stretched before them. An endless white desert. The ruins of old towers poked out of the snow like broken teeth. Eli adjusted the suit's temperature and turned to Lyra. Stay close. The suit's field can protect you from the worst of the wind. Lyra nodded, pulling Nira close. Together they began to walk east. Hours passed. The snow crunched under their boots. The silence felt heavy, No birds, no machines, not even the hum of life. Only the faint sound of the wind and their slow breathing. After a while, Nira whispered, "Mama, where are we going?" Lyra smiled softly. "To a place where we can call for help, my star. Will the man come with us?" Eli glanced back and smiled. "I'm not going anywhere," Nira giggled. "Good." For a brief moment, even the cold felt lighter. But as the suns dipped lower, the horizon began to glow red, not from sunset, but from something else. Eli's eyes narrowed. "That's not natural." Lyra followed his gaze. The red glow pulsed like fire flickering behind fog. A low hum began to echo. Eli raised his scanner. The readings spiked. "Energy field ahead." "Big one." Lyra's voice dropped. "Could it be the old reactor?" "Maybe," Eli said. "Or worse." They moved cautiously toward the glow. The air grew warmer, vibrating faintly. Then through the haze they saw it, a huge metallic structure rising from the snow. Half buried and broken, it was a ship, not human, not Ilarian, but something older. The hull was cracked open, black smoke curling from its wounds. Strange symbols glowed faintly on its side. Lyra's eyes widened. That's from before the war." Eli stared, realizing what it was. "No, that's Zarek tech." The name hung in the cold air like poison. The Zarek were the invaders, the reason the humans had come to help Alaris long ago. Ruthless, silent, and cruel. They had vanished after the last battle. Or so everyone believed. Eli stepped closer. "If this crashed recently, someone might still be inside." Lyra grabbed his arm. "No, if they live, they'll kill us." He looked at her, calm but firm. "If they live, we need to know why they're here again." For a long moment they stood there, the alien mother trembling, the human soldier unreadable. Then she sighed. "Fine, but I'm staying close." Eli led the way. They entered through a torn section of hull. Inside, the air was thick with heat and smoke. Sparks jumped from the walls. Nira hid behind her mother, whispering, "I don't like this place." "I know," Lyra said softly. "Stay near me." They passed through what looked like a control room, shattered panels, flickering lights, bodies lying still. But one sound made Eli freeze, a faint clicking, then a voice, mechanical, broken. "A human presence detected." Eli raised his weapon. "Show yourself." From the shadows, a small drone floated out, damaged, one light blinking weakly. "Mission. Failure. System. Collapsing." Eli stepped forward slowly. "What mission?" The drone whirred weakly. "Zarek. Return and command. World harvest." Lyra's face went pale. "Harvest? No. They're coming back?" Eli's pulse quickened. "Not if I can warn the colonies first." He picked up the drone's data core. This could have coordinates. "If I get it to the relay, we can send a warning signal." But before he could move, the ground shook violently. A deep rumble echoed through the wreck. "Earthquake?" Lyra shouted. Eli's scanner blinked red. "No, reactor overload." The ship began to collapse, metal screaming. Eli grabbed Nira, shouting, "Run!" They sprinted through the corridors, flames chasing behind them. Lyra coughed, smoke burning her lungs. The heat was unbearable. Eli's armor took most of it, but his strength was fading fast. They burst out of the ship just as a massive explosion tore through the hull, sending fire and metal into the sky. The blast threw them into the snow. Everything went white and silent again. When Lyra opened her eyes, Eli was lying a few feet away, motionless. The child cried out, "Mama!" "The man." Lyra crawled to him, shaking him by the shoulders. "Eli, wake up!" He didn't move. Tears filled her eyes. "Please, not now." Then, a faint breath. A small cough. Eli opened his eyes weakly. "Still, not dead." Lyra let out a shaky laugh, tears freezing on her cheeks. "You really don't know how to die, do you?" He smiled faintly. "Not while you two still need me." In the distance, the fire burned bright, a warning sign against the white sky. The Zarek had returned. Lyra looked at the horizon, fear tightening her chest. "They'll come for us again." Eli stood slowly but firmly. "Then we move faster. The world might be ending, but not today." He looked at them both, the alien mother and her child, and for the first time, he didn't see strangers. He saw something worth fighting for. The sky was red when they began walking again. Smoke from the destroyed Zarek ship still rose behind them, painting a dark line across the horizon. Eli walked ahead, his movements slower than before. His armor was damaged, the left arm half dead, sparks flickering from its joints. Lyra followed close, carrying little Nira on her back. The child slept, her head resting gently on her mother's shoulder. Each step through the snow felt heavier, but Lyra's eyes burned with new determination. Eli stopped for a moment, scanning the terrain with his wrist device. "We're getting close," he said quietly. "The relay station should be 3 kilometers east, past those cliffs." Lyra looked up at the rising hills of ice and metal. "Will it still work after all these years?" "Maybe," Eli said. "If the power core's intact, I can send a signal. But once we turn it on," he glanced back toward the dark smoke, "they'll see it." Lyra's voice was firm. "We don't have a choice. The Zarek are returning. Someone has to know." He nodded slowly. "Then let's move." The climb was brutal. The ice cracked beneath their boots and the wind screamed across the open cliffs. Halfway up, Eli's knee servos gave a sharp hiss and stopped working. He gritted his teeth and kept climbing with his good leg, refusing to slow down. Lyra noticed. "You're hurt again," she said. "Just tired metal," he muttered. "I've been worse," she frowned. "You always say that," he gave a short smile. "Because it's true." When they finally reached the top, they saw it, the relay station. It stood half buried in snow, a tall spire of rusted steel rising from the ice like a forgotten tower. Faded human markings glowed faintly on the side. United Earth Signal Relay, Aero 7. Lyra gasped softly. "You humans really did build wonders." Eli looked at it with quiet sadness. "We built them to talk to each other, but most of them died in silence." He walked to the main hatch, brushing snow away from the control panel. "Let's see if you still remember me." He pressed his hand to the scanner. A long pause and then a faint click. The door opened with a low hiss, releasing a breath of warm air. Inside, the lights flickered to life, dim but steady. Dust floated through the air like ghosts. Rows of consoles lined the walls, covered in frost and cracks. Eli moved quickly, his fingers brushing the old keys. "Still intact," he said. "If I can restart the main generator, we can send a signal to orbit." Lyra placed Nira gently on a chair, covering her with a blanket. "Will anyone answer?" she asked softly. Eli didn't look up. "I don't know, but I'll try anyway." He opened a panel, rewired some circuits, and linked his wrist cord to the main console. Sparks danced, and then a low hum filled the room. The monitors blinked awake. One screen flashed. System boot. Relay 07. Active Lyra. Smiled faintly. "You did it. Not yet," Eli said. "We need a clean frequency." He began typing commands. The old screen flickered, then displayed a spinning Earth logo, faint but still there. Static crackled through the speakers, then a voice, broken, distant. "This is Colony Command. Any surviving units respond." "Repeat, any survivors respond?" Lyra's eyes widened. "Someone's out there." Eli's breath caught. It had been years since he'd heard a human voice over open comms. "Command. This is Eli Grant, Exploration Corps. I have 2 civilians with me. Requesting extraction and immediate warning relay." Zarek forces confirmed active. Static again. Then, "Grant, you're alive? Signal weak. Transmit data now." "Coordinates." The line cut. Eli cursed under his breath. "The tower's battery's dying." He looked at Lyra. "We need to boost the signal using the reactor outside." "It's old, but if I route power manually." Lyra frowned. "Manually? You mean dangerous." He didn't deny it. "Someone has to go out there and connect it directly. Once I do, it'll send everything we've got. The coordinates, the warning. Everything." She stared at him. "And what about you?" He smiled softly. "I'll be right behind you." But she could see it in his eyes. The same look he had before fighting the raiders. "No," she said firmly. "You promised Nira you wouldn't die." Eli sighed. "I'll keep that promise as long as I can." Before she could stop him, he grabbed the data core from his belt and headed for the door. Lyra followed, shouting, "Eli!" Wait, outside the wind had returned, sharp and biting. The small reactor sat at the base of the tower, half frozen, its cables ripped apart by time. Eli knelt beside it, opening the casing. Sparks jumped as he rewired connections, ignoring the heat that scorched his gloves. Lyra reached him, grabbing his arm. "You'll kill yourself doing this." He looked up at her, calm, steady. If this message gets through, maybe others won't have to die like this. Maybe your people and mine will have a future. Tears welled in her eyes. You humans always think saving the world means dying for it. He smiled faintly. Maybe that's just how we're built. Then he pressed the final switch. The reactor roared to life, a beam of blue light shooting up into the sky. The ground trembled. The tower blazed with power, and the signal burst through the clouds, a final cry to the stars. Inside the station, alarms screamed. The overload was spreading. Eli! Lyra shouted, trying to pull him away. It's too much. He staggered back, coughing from the heat. Go, take Nira and run. No, she cried, holding on to him. We leave together. The tower shook violently. A blast of fire and light erupted from the base. For a few endless seconds, the world became pure light. When the smoke cleared, the relay tower stood burning, but the signal had gone through. Lyra opened her eyes, lying in the snow. Nira cried beside her, clutching her hand. And there, a few feet away, Eli lay motionless, his armor cracked, his face peaceful. Lyra crawled to him, tears streaming down her face. Eli, please, wake up. She pressed her hand to his chest faintly, so faintly she felt a pulse. He was alive. Barely. Lyra whispered, her voice breaking. You foolish human. You did it. She looked up at the glowing sky, where the signal beam faded slowly into the stars. Help would come, because one man refused to let the cold win. Snowflakes drifted down softly from the broken sky. The storm had passed, leaving behind silence, and the kind of silence that only comes after chaos. Lyra knelt beside Eli, her hands shaking. His armor was cracked open, the chest plate half melted from the explosion. His breath came slow, uneven, shallow. Stay with me, she whispered desperately. You hear me, human? Don't you dare leave us now. Little Nira clung to her mother's arm, tears streaming down her tiny face. Mama, he's not moving. Lyra brushed the child's hair, trying to stay calm. He's alive, my star. He just needs time. But deep inside, she wasn't sure. She looked toward the relay tower, the last of the blue energy beam fading into the clouds. The ground still smoked, and the once silent world smelled like burnt metal and hope. He had done it. The message had gone through. But the cost was tearing her apart. Hours passed before Eli stirred. A groan escaped his lips, weak but alive. His eyes opened, tired, unfocused, then found her face. Still here, he whispered, voice hoarse. Guess I didn't die again. Lyra laughed through tears, her relief breaking all at once. You came too close this time. He tried to smile, but pain crossed his face. Signal went through? Yes, she said softly. You did it, Eli. The message is out there. He closed his eyes, whispering something that sounded like a prayer. Then he looked at her again. You should. Take the girl and go. Rescue ships won't come fast. And if the Zarek follow that signal... Lyra gripped his hand firmly. I'm not leaving you. You don't have to... Be quiet, she said sharply. You saved us when you didn't have to. You fought for us. You gave your blood for us. So now you'll let me return at least a little of that. For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind moved gently around them, whispering like an old friend. Eli finally said, You sound like someone I used to know. Lyra tilted her head. Someone you loved? He was quiet for a long time before answering. Her name was Mara, my wife. Back on Earth, Lyra's expression softened. What happened to her? Eli's voice cracked, the pain raw. The Zarek invasion. She worked at the orbital labs. They hit it first. I was on the surface when it happened. I tried to reach her shuttle, but I was too late. He looked at his scarred hands. When she died, I thought my heart froze with her. But then the war came here and I saw your people. Families, children, running, hiding, dying the same way we did. I stayed because I couldn't watch it happen again. Lyra's eyes shimmered with tears. So you stayed. To keep your promise to her. He nodded weakly. Yeah, I guess I did. Silence filled the air. Heavy, sad, but warm. Lyra reached out and gently placed her hand over his heart. It didn't freeze, she whispered. Your heart still beats, Eli. It's what saved us. He looked at her, really looked. And for the first time in years, he felt something he thought he had buried long ago. A reason to live. As the night fell, they moved back inside the half-broken relay station. Lyra built a small fire using debris and wires while Nira slept near the heater. Eli lay near the wall, his armor removed, bandaged with pieces of thermal cloth. His breathing was steadier now, but his body trembled with exhaustion. Lyra sat beside him, watching the fire's glow dance across the metal walls. "Do you think they heard the signal?" she asked quietly. Eli nodded faintly. "They heard it. The colonies still scan for old codes like that. Someone will come. And if the Zarek come first?" Eli's eyes hardened. "Then I'll fight again," Lyra frowned. "You can barely move," he smirked weakly. "Doesn't mean I can't aim." Despite the danger, she smiled. "You humans really are impossible." "Yeah," he said softly. "That's our best trait." Sometime later, the faint sound of static filled the air. A small speaker in the corner crackled to life. Eli's eyes shot open. He reached for the comm switch. "This is Grant, Relay 7, identify yourself." A voice answered, faint but clear. "Relay 7? We received your transmission. Rescue ship inbound." "ETA, 18 hours, Lyra gasped. "They're coming?" Eli smiled, his eyes closing in relief. "Told you someone would answer." But then the voice continued, more urgent. "Warning, Zarek intercept signal detected. Multiple ships inbound to your location. Hold position if possible. Evacuate if compromised." The signal cut. Lyra's heart dropped. "Eli, I heard," he said grimly. "They're coming." She looked at him, pale, weak, but still calm. "Then we run now." He shook his head. "No, you and Nira run. I'll stay. If the Zarek find this place, I'll draw them away." "No!" Lyra snapped. "You'll die." Eli looked at her, his voice steady but kind. "Someone has to buy time for the ship to land. You have a daughter and a future. Don't waste it." Tears filled her eyes. "Stop talking like that." He reached out and touched her cheek. His hand was rough, warm despite his weakness. "You told me once that my heart still beats. Then let it beat for something worth saving." Lyra grabbed his hand and held it tightly. "If you stay, then I stay too. I won't let you face them alone." He started to protest, but the look in her eyes silenced him. It was the same look he had seen in soldiers long ago. Courage, unbreakable and pure. He finally sighed, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Stubborn alien. Learn from the best," she said softly. They sat there in silence. Hands joined, the fire flickering between them. Outside, the wind carried the sound of engines. Faint, distant but growing. 18 hours until rescue. Less than one until the Zarek arrived. The fight wasn't over. But for the first time they would face it together. The night sky burned again. Far above the frozen plains, fire streaked through the clouds. Ships entering the atmosphere, dark shadows with blue lights. Eli Grant watched them through the cracked relay window. His face was pale but calm. "They're here," he said quietly. "The Zarek came faster than I thought." Beside him, Lyra felt her chest tighten. The air smelled of ozone, like the world itself was holding its breath. "How long before they reach us?" Eli checked his wrist scanner. Half the screen was broken, flickering red. "Maybe 20 minutes. And the rescue ship?" He didn't answer right away. Then softly, 18 hours. Lyra understood. There would be no rescue before the storm of fire arrived. Inside the relay station, everything hummed. Overworked machines, dying circuits, the faint whisper of wind pressing against the metal walls. Nira, the little girl, sat near the heater, clutching the small pendant Eli had made from a piece of his broken armor. Lyra knelt beside her. "You must be brave, my star," she whispered. "Do you remember what I told you about the sunrise?" Nira nodded sleepily. "That it always comes back even after the cold." Lyra smiled, though her voice trembled. "Yes, you'll see it again." Eli stepped forward, placing his hand gently on the girl's head. "Listen to your mother, and when the humans come, tell them what happened here. Tell them the signal worked." Nira looked up at him with wide eyes. "You'll come with us, right?" He hesitated, then forced a smile. "Of course, kid. I'll be right behind you." But Lyra saw the truth in his eyes, the quiet goodbye hiding behind his calm words. When Nira finally drifted to sleep, Lyra turned to him. "You plan to fight them alone," he nodded. "If I can hold them off long enough, they might not find you before rescue arrives." "That's suicide," she said, anger and fear mixing in her voice. "You can't even walk properly." Eli smiled faintly. You said it yourself, humans are impossible. She grabbed his arm. Don't joke about this, he looked at her. Really looked. And for a moment his voice softened. Lyra, you and Nira, you gave me something I didn't think I'd ever feel again, she whispered. What? Purpose, warmth. He took her hand. When I found you in that tent, I thought I was saving your lives. But maybe you saved mine first. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. Then don't throw it away now. He leaned forward, resting his forehead gently against hers, human and alien, two survivors breathing the same fragile air. I'm not throwing it away, he whispered. I'm giving it meaning. The first explosion shook the ground. The Zarek ships descended like thunder, black metal insects tearing through the sky. Blue energy cut across the snow, vaporizing everything it touched. Eli stood at the entrance, rifle in hand, armor flickering with weak light. He turned to Lyra one last time. When I start firing, take the tunnel behind the relay. It'll lead you to the old canyon line. Stay there until it's safe. Lyra's lips trembled. Eli, he smiled. Hey, don't forget to tell Nira about the sunrise. Before she could answer, he stepped outside. The cold wind roared around him, carrying the sound of distant engines. The first Zarek soldier landed, tall, skeletal, made of silver and shadow. Its glowing eyes locked on him. Eli raised his rifle. Welcome back, he muttered and fired. The blast hit squarely, the alien bursting into blue flame. But more came. He moved like a ghost, every shot precise, every movement slow but deadly. His suit screamed warnings, his body screamed pain, but he didn't stop. Inside the relay station, Lyra watched through the crack in the wall, heart pounding. Eli fought alone against an army. The ground shook again. Plasma fire lit the sky. One bolt struck the tower, sending debris flying. The heat was blinding. Eli! She screamed. He turned, saw her, their eyes met through the fire. For a moment, everything else disappeared. He smiled, weak but warm. Run. Then he threw a plasma grenade into the nearest ship. The explosion tore through the snowfield, a wall of light rising to the heavens. Lyra grabbed Nira, running into the tunnel as the relay tower began to collapse. Behind them, the world shook with thunder. They reached the canyon's edge just as a second explosion lit the sky. Lyra turned, gasping for air, holding her daughter tight. Through the smoke and fire, she saw a single figure still standing. Eli Grant, covered in light, surrounded by flames. His armor glowed red, his face calm. The sky exploded again, and the world went white. When Lyra woke, the world was quiet. Snow fell softly again, covering everything, even the ruins, even the fire. The relay station was gone. The storm had passed. In the distance, the sound of engines approached, smooth, steady, human. The rescue ship. Lyra held Nira close as the ship landed, sending waves of snow into the air. A hatch opened and human soldiers stepped out, scanning the area. One of them spotted her. Survivors. We've got survivors. They ran toward her, wrapping blankets around both of them. Are you the one who sent the signal? A soldier asked. Lyra nodded slowly, tears spilling down her cheeks. No, she whispered. He did. She pointed toward the snowfield, but there was nothing there. Only silence. The soldier looked confused. Who? Lyra smiled sadly. A human with a broken heart. And a fire inside that never died. Hours later, as the rescue ship rose through the clouds, Lyra stood by the window, holding Nira in her arms. The planet below was fading into white and blue, peaceful again. Nira looked up at her mother. Mama, do you think the man is watching us? Lyra smiled softly. Yes, my star. He's watching. He's the warmth in the cold now. Outside the window, the rising sun cut through the clouds into golden, bright, endless, and for a moment, Lyra swore she saw a figure standing in the light, smiling, his hand raised in farewell. The human who warmed them both, not just with heat but with his heart.